Hi, I'm Robin McClendon and welcome to my channel where we deal with regulating our nervous system through creativity and Zen practices. So we're here for pause 33, which is the rhythm of repetition. So this week's pause, the rhythm of repetition, came out of the pause before we were dealing with the alchemy of materials. And I think it's something about that as I was working through processes and just playing with a lot of different materials and just my favorite combinations, my favorite sort of go-to things that I enjoy doing. And then I was actually experimenting with some other combinations of paints and different supplies, inks and what have you. And I started noticing various types of repetition in my work, like things that I enjoy doing over and over again. For those of you who've been following me on my art channel, you guys know I love ink blots. And so for me, ink blots has a repetition to it, but it doesn't produce the same thing. So you can do the same piece of paper, same drop of ink, fold it, smooth it around, open it, and you're always going to get something different. And that's what I love about it, because it's something regulating in our nervous systems about doing something over and over again that calms us, that sort of gives this, the nervous system and our brains in relationship to that likes repetition that is calming. And so we have a tendency, that's why we have a tendency to do sort of the same things over and over again. It's something about that repetition that the body recognizes and really puts us into this sort of parasympathetic space. Now, of course, we know not everything. We've already dealt with in our earlier pauses about things like doom scrolling and things like that. That's a repetition that doesn't put us in the parasympathetic. But we've been talking about taking better care of ourselves around what we're listening to and how we're listening to it, right? So if we're listening to music on CDs and on vinyls, wow, it's a whole nother experience, right? Because there's no ads. There's nothing to interrupt there's no algorithms to kind of entrain our thinking or our feelings a particular kind of way. Gardening, of course, enjoying, cooking creatively and things like that really create a repetition, and it creates like the rhythm of sort of ritual. And that's what, with rituals, that's why they have a sort of grounding effect in our lives. Certain things we do over and over again that become a part of our own cultural rituals, our personal rituals, our family rituals. All these things act as grounding forces in our lives, which is why picking the rituals that you do is so important, like making sure that it's your rituals, not somebody else's imposed upon you. And we dealt with that a number of pauses back when we've talked about the fears, the beliefs that are ours and the beliefs that have been given to us, right? The ones we've inherited. And so like at this point of our lives, goodness, it's like really making sure we're selecting those things that really speak to us. So yes, with the rhythm of repetition, I really started sort of playing in my studio around different ways I was making my ink blots. And in my journal, the journal pages are nothing but the ink blots that I made. And really what I did is I charted the progression of them. I did them in a stack all at the same time. And it was funny because the top one looked one way and the bottom one became something else, even though it was the same ink and it was a whole pile that I folded at the same time to smush them. And that really is really reflective of true harmony and true rhythm, because a lot of times we think of repetition as something you do over and over again and it's so boring, and it can be. But I think if we pay attention, as we are doing now with our pauses, to all of the subtleties, those moments in between, the major activities that we do, you'll start noticing that the repetition isn't always the same. It doesn't necessarily always hit you the same way. You may not always feel the same way. You may notice subtle variations that really calm you a little bit more, or maybe create a little bit more bliss, or maybe even create a little anxiety. And so as we notice these things, it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to quite do it like that because it sort of was a little anxiety triggering kind of thing. But when we notice what's working, it's good to ask ourselves, okay, why did that particular rhythm of repetition really work for me? Because it's this conscious awareness around pausing in our life, to become more in tune and more connected to not only how we are harmonizing in our own bodies, but how that harmony creates stories, creates our mythos, right? And many of you have followed me with art. It's something I call art mythos, which is still telling our stories visually. But we tell our stories a lot of ways, through sound, through dance, through movement, through the way we cook, the way we garden, the way we decorate our homes. That's a big one. That's really a big one. The storytelling around that. I love walking into someone's home for the first time and just looking around, and immediately, as a cultural anthropologist, I'm immediately reading everything, and I'm noticing the kind of statues they have, the kind of symbols they have on their walls, the way they put their collections together or not. These tell me a lot about that person's story, and I'm just fascinated by that. So I think home decor, home decorating is so important. So when we even decorate our homes, right, from this place of truly pouring our stories into it, and not, furniture gallery, decor, like you go in, the whole thing is set up, you buy it all, you bring it in, a vase here, a vase there, like really becoming more in tune. And I think that's why even on YouTube here, there's so many channels that focus on home decor and DIY and how to make things your own, and various influencers who are vlogging about their lives and how they're decorating their homes and how they're renovating and the different ways, the high low, thrifting and vintage shopping. People love that. Why? Because you're watching how another person is selecting things to tell their stories. And so it's nothing different here for us as we are dealing with our pauses. The idea and the art of the pause, right? And we've really been digging in and deeply into the idea of the art of the pause, because it really it's becoming an art form. It's becoming a way that it's an art form in itself, separate from whether or not we're creating as artists. And for those of us who may not be artists, but you love journaling, you love writing, you love the idea of just, trying to put image to page. Collage is wonderful for that, because you can cut images out the magazines, you can collage bits and pieces of found ephemera, or you're on a trip and you collect some different things and you get to glue that in a book. And all of that is very cathartic. I love travel journals because for me, it's a rhythm of repetition in that. I have tons of travel journals because every time I go on a trip, I create a book and then I take it with me. Like I'm heading to Scotland next week and I've got my travel journal all ready for that trip. In fact, it's sitting right over here. It's like a traveler's notebook style that I made, and these you can find on Amazon if you don't want to make one yourself. But it's this yummy leather one that you can see it's well worn. I've had this probably for about 8 years and it's gone on a lot of trips with me. But I literally just sort of make my own kind of journal inside, but you can purchase the whole thing ready to go and then take it with you. And those books come out, so then you can kind of create travel journals. And I love the repetition of that. So I'm excited about all of that. This week I worked with, I don't know what caused me to do this teal color, but it just popped up for me and I absolutely loved it. It's the first time I actually put that color in my journal. For those of you who've been following me and have been journaling with me, but that's how change is. And so I was doing a repetition around the ink blots. But what came up that was surprising for me is I changed the color from, which is normally black, the brown, red, sort of orange color as well, to this teal. So I think when we also enjoy a certain repetition or a certain pattern, we allow surprises to come up, various nuances to pop up that are unexpected. And that's where that joy, that's where that magic, that's where that bliss is. And I am a firm believer, no matter what times we're living in, no matter what's going on, there is magic and bliss to be found. We just need to be aware of it. And when little things pop up, we can focus on that and allow that to center us and allow that to ground us. And little things like that, believe it or not, really will ground your neurological systems and take you out of sympathetic into parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest. The sympathetic is the fight or flight. And we can be in that a lot, just in the world. But the little surprise for me of using that teal was like, whoa, it just caused me to sort of be surprised and happy at the same time, right? So pauses are about awareness. And these pauses, as many of you know, just come out of my daily life. It's because I'm going through this process. I'm allowing myself to heal from a lot of my allowing for social media to sort of entrain me, sort of unconsciously. You just kind of go along until one day you wake up and you're that little caricature that has the big wide eyes and you're exhausted from doom scrolling. And you're like, how did I get here? And so we have been on a journey from detoxing from all of that and really selecting the platforms we want to engage with, and deselecting the ones that just kind of get fed because of the algorithms. So here again, social media is not good or bad. It's how we engage with it. Like anything in life is like that. It's not inherently the thing itself. It's like how we allow ourselves to engage with it. So with the rhythm of repetition, in terms of artists, one of the artists I think a lot about when we think about repetition and we think about pattern is Pointillism, which is an impressionistic style. Like Seurat, he was well known for this idea of Pointillism, which is like the repetition of little teeny dots that when you move back from it, you can't see the dots any longer. You just see you just see the image that was created from it. And there again, that rhythm of repetition, that focusing in and allowing that little same rhythm to create each time something different. And a more modern artist that I think about is Damien Hirst, where he used the larger dots. And it's these dot patterns. He has some work where he's done cherry blossoms, and they're in that more sort of this pointillistic style. And I think from that he moved into just making the dots, the points larger until they were dots. And he's so well known as a fine artist for this dot pattern. And even if you're not necessarily into studying artists or knowing art movements, you might be surprised. You might have a Damien Hirst hanging somewhere in your home as a poster or a book cover or something like that, and not even realizing that's whose work it was. So so it's just interesting to think about it from the standpoint of an art movement, and how so in terms of like the concrete, and then telescoping back out into the abstract, and how we use that repetition in our lives. And finding those patterns, finding those rituals is what this whole journey on the pause is all about. It's what this channel is about, because I am just so committed to my own continued healing and existing more in the parasympathetic system. And once you really drop into it consciously and you realize, wow, like I remember the first time I really just dropped into it consciously this year. And I thought, wow, I'm able to start controlling this. I can almost, through awareness, know what it feels like to move into my parasympathetic system. And it really doesn't have anything to do with listening to Zen music or doing an affirmation or doing yoga, because you can still do all of that stuff from your sympathetic system. It really is this subtle shift that occurs when we actually shift our awareness. So many of you have shared with me that you've noticed this for yourselves. And those of you who are new on this journey with me, after a few pauses, a few times of doing this awareness pops up. So I had tons of fun this month in this week, in the journal. And I just invite all of us to continue to learn and discover, and please continue to share in the comments your awarenesses, things that are coming up for you. I read them all. I love that because it's feedback for me as well. Where's my journal? Here it is. I know you've already seen the overview of it, but I like to just have it here on my lap. I got started and didn't even have it in my hand. But yeah, this right here was just this teal. I mean, goodness, yummy. And what was funny is that it started off with this ink blot that looks like a petal. Doesn't it look like a petal, like a flower? And I always identify with the lotus blossom, because the lotus blossom is considered a flower of like enlightenment, of opening your mind, and it's like an opening, it's an illumination, it's an awareness thing that happens. So I thought it was interesting. It was that, and then as it morphed into this X pattern. So it's funny, it was a repetition that happened all at one time, but it sort of became this sort of X pattern, which was really interesting. So I just decided that on these pages, all I was going to do was chart the journey of that ink blot into what it became. So I love it all. But thank you guys for being here with me as always and being on this journey. It means so much to me. You're sharing, and I feel like we're just in this. You guys share so much with me. I know that we're all in this space of healing, and you guys have shared out with your friends and people that may be having sort of a hard time, and you've shared with me how they just respond to it even though they're not artists, or even though they're not doing the journal. And some of them are saying, hey, I want to start a journal like that, because it just resonated with them. So continue to share. We're all doing our little piece. And until next week, love you guys, and have an amazing time, documenting your pauses. Bye-bye.